Oh hi! I am, as you would say, lonely. I don't get out much. And in fact, the only human contact I get is when Mara's shouting at me for basically anything. So the only times I really speak to people is when I'm on online gaming. I mean, those people are the kindest people I've ever met.
Right, I'll tell you what, you fat little cunt.
Online gaming, it's been around for as long as I can remember, and these games, it's integrated into all modern systems. But back in the day, like the early 2000s, it was only just becoming a thing. So I've decided to look at the past and go over some of the early days of online gaming. So let's go. Our story starts with the Dreamcast.
It's no secret that I love this thing. I mean, we nearly got married in 2008 before I decided to pull out. And the Dreamcast has what I would say the first modern experience for online gaming. And that was with SegaNet.
SegaNet was the name of the Dreamcast's online functionality. However, it had several different names depending on the country that you were in. In Japan, it was called Diecast. In Europe, it was called Dream Arena. And in Australia, it was called Comma. All three were very different to each other, and they all begun and ended on different dates, with the American and European services lasting from 1999 to 2003, but Japan actually continued service from 1998 to 2007 for whatever reason. Admittedly, the Dreamcast was much more successful over in Japan. The Japanese service utilised Dream Passports, and this was software for the console that allowed users to connect to the internet on their Dreamcast. There were 3 versions of the Dream Passport, with the third one allowing users to play old Mega Drive or PC Engine games on their console. Kinda like how Nintendo allows users to play NES and SNES games on the Nintendo Switch Online today. Over in America they had SegaNet, and it was actually quite popular for the first few months. But that popularity soon died out, due to the PS2 taking up a lot of the console market share at the time. This actually led to Sega giving Dreamcasts away, in an attempt to drum up some sort of support for the console and its online service. They offered a rebate of a Dreamcast console and a keyboard for anyone who signed up for a 2-year contract with SegaNet. But even this didn't prove successful, and the service was discontinued after only 11 months. Sega would still support Phantasy Star Online until 2003 though. This success wasn't really achieved in Europe either with Dream Arena. The service was originally available for France, Germany, Spain, Italy, and my home turf, the UK, and would later expand, and then in December of 2000 it would expand to other countries across the continent. It was a paid service in some countries, however in other countries, like the UK, it wasn't paid for. Just like Japan, Europe used the software to access the internet. Over here, we called it a Dream Key. And this was built into many different games. And the service was a lot more successful than Sega had ever dreamed of it being. But again, the service didn't last long and was discontinued in 2003. Australia also had their own online service called Comma or Corma, and I'm not entirely sure on what the exact name is. Other than that though, there isn't much to say about it, so I'll just acknowledge its existence and move on. So in the beginning of the 2000s, the PS2 reigned supreme. The PS2 called their online service NetPlay over in this country. And I mean, yeah, that's definitely a name. Unlike the Dreamcast, weirdly, it wasn't actually an official service offered by Sony, and instead all of the game servers were ran by third parties, those who were already making the game. So there wasn't really that much integrated into the console itself. In fact, originally you would need a adapter for the original model of the PS1, but eventually online support would be fully integrated into slimmer versions of the console. Other than that, however, there isn't much to say about the PS2's online support, as, well, there wasn't really actually any online support. Microsoft came to the console scene with the original Xbox in 2001. And a year later, they released what would then be known as Xbox Live. And to this day, Xbox Live is still around, albeit with a worse name. Hoping to capitalise on the market left behind by the Dreamcast and improve upon it, Microsoft began their domination on the market, utilising broadband technology, unlike the PS2. The name of Xbox Live was revealed at E3 2002, and it was eventually released on the 1-year anniversary of the Xbox's release. It would feature stuff like a friends list and a unified identity across all games. Now this is where online gaming perhaps peaked. Xbox Live was still going strong and now featured a free version and a paid version, known as Xbox Live Gold and Silver. This is the version of the Xbox Live that I grew up with, and I still love it to this day. There was a sense of community and fun and stuff like avatars and the messages and voice note system. Of course, the service has a reputation of, toxicity from players during online play. In 2010, support for the original Xbox was killed off. However, to this day, support for the Xbox 360 is still around. This generation is also when Sony decided to actually give a fuck and launched PSN, or PlayStation Network, in 2006. And this has many of the same features as the Xbox 360, but in my opinion, and this may be blinded by nostalgia, I don't think it is as good as Xbox Live. I think that PSN is not bad, it's not as rememberable, and I think this is evident by how many people fondly remember the Xbox Live on the internet, whereas I've never really seen anyone talk about the early days of PSN. That said, however, just like the 360, the PS3 is still supported by Sony to this day. However, unlike the Xbox 360 and PS3, the Wii's online service is no longer supported by Nintendo. Called Nintendo Wi-Fi Connection, the Wii has the worst name for an internet connectivity out of all of them. In my opinion, of course. There was also support for the DS included in this service too. To be frank, the service was quite lacking compared to the Xbox and PlayStation. But is that not just the story of the Wii in general? And a lot of the time, the service was just laggy and not that easy to play on. That said though, I do think it is still sad to see the service will never be utilised again, as it's clear that despite being buggy and unreliable, it was loved by many fans, myself included for the very few times that I did use it. So it warms my heart that there's a lot of attempts by fans to make revival platforms for the online connectivity for the Wii, such as Reconnect24.
So that was a very brief look at the modern history of online gaming. I could have gone further, I could have talked about the 8th generation of gaming, but to be honest, I think that's when it started to become what it is today, and I didn't want to talk about modern online gaming. I wanted to talk about the early 2000s. That's when online gaming was in its peak. And I'll be honest, coming into this, I didn't know what I was going to say, but now I think it's pretty easy to say that the Xbox has consistently had the best online features, followed by PlayStation. And for once in history, for the first time ever, the Dreamcast can be praised for doing something right. Because a lot of what we see in online gaming today can be seen in the Dreamcast and early Xbox Live. Yeah, I sure do love online gaming. I mean, the people on there are some of the best people I've ever met.
Do you honestly think you're fucking funny? Seriously. You're a fucking ugly little cunt, mate, and if I ever see you, I'm gonna fucking slit your fucking face wide open, yeah?
God, I fucking hate people.